You're now watching Qnews. Here are the top stories for this hour. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry has called on the international community to move beyond statements and take concrete action to halt Israeli aggression and end the occupation. In a strong statement, the ministry criticized the lack of global intervention, warning that words alone cannot address the severity of Israeli action. It reaffirmed its diplomatic efforts to pressure Israel, condemning the ongoing siege on Gaza, the expansion of West Bank annexation, settler violence and collective punishment, particularly during the holy month of Ramadan. A total of 41 along with caregivers arrived and were immediately transferred to Egyptian hospitals for full medical treatment. Meanwhile, Israel continues to block humanitarian aid from entering Palestinian territories for the 14th consecutive day, maintaining its siege by shutting borders crossings and restricting essential supplies. Syrian interim President Ahmed Shara has signed the constitutional declaration laying the foundation for a new Syria. Shara has hope for a future driven by knowledge over ignorance and mercy over suffering. The drafting committee emphasized freedoms, cultural diversity and balance between security and liberty. The declaration upholds Islamic jurisprudence, protects religious rights, ensure judicial independence and guarantees media freedom while granting parliament authority over ministers and the president. The transition period is set to last 5 years. The Lebanese cabinet appointed Brigadier General Rodolphe Hayak as Army Commander and Brigadier General Raed Abdullah as Director General of Internal Security. Minister of Information Paul Morcos confirmed the appointments were based on expertise and merit. Brigadier Generals Hassan Shouker and Edgar Luandus were also named to key security roles. Additionally, the cabinet approved recruiting 4,500 soldiers for the army in 3 phases. Russian President Vladimir Putin has confirmed that Moscow accepted ceasefire proposals, emphasizing the need for a lasting peace that addresses the crisis' root causes. Speaking alongside the President of Belarus, Putin questioned how Ukraine would use the 30-day ceasefire. He warned that Ukraine might exploit the truce for rearmament and insisted that Kiev should push the US to halt hostilities. Meanwhile, Russia forces continue advancing on nearly all fronts, particularly in Kursk. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of manipulation and stalling to prolong the conflict, dismissing Putin's remarks on a US proposed temporary truce. In his nightly address, Zelensky urged increased pressure on Moscow, asserting that Putin is committed to the conflict. He emphasized that Ukraine imposed peace, blaming Russia for delay, while vowing to work with allies to force an end to the conflict. The group of 7 ministers from G7 along with European Union convened in the remote tourist town of La Maliba in Canada for meetings on Thursday and Friday that in the past have been broadly consensual. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed his colleagues on talks with Ukraine in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where Kiev said it was ready to support a 30-day ceasefire deal. But officials said ambiguous comments by Russian President Vladimir Putin left delegates unclear where things stood. U.S. President Donald Trump told NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte that U.S. control over Greenland is crucial for global security, intensifying his push to annex the Arctic island. During the meeting at the White House, Trump warned of influential players operating along Greenland's coast, emphasizing the need for vigilance. When asked directly about annexation, he responded confidently, stating that he believes it will happen.
In the case of Canada, we're spending $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada.
A Chinese envoy to the United Nations has urged all parties in Sudan to agree to a ceasefire during Ramadan as soon as possible. The conflict between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces has been escalating, particularly in Khartoum and central and western Sudan, with both sides preparing for decisive battles. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Kong, told the Security Council that next month will mark 2 years since the conflict began. There are still no signs of peace. He condemned recent RSF attacks on camps for displaced people near the El Fasher in western Sudan, warning that continued hostilities have worsened the humanitarian crisis, with rising civilian casualties and mass displacements. This concludes our top stories for this hour. Many thanks for watching and goodbye.